Hello, everyone, and welcome to iCritic Live. This is the podcast where we talk about entertainment, pop culture, and life in between. I'm your host, Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes of your time here with me today in what is almost certain to be the last live stream of 2024. And I've got an episode today that I'm pretty excited about. You know, we've had some big guests on this show, but you know who I also really like talking about? I like talking to the people who make the stuff that we consume and we are entertained by. I like talking to the animators, the music people, the editors. I like to know what it's like to be an everyday person who works in entertainment, particularly in animation. And through reasons that we will get through to the episode, I was turned on to Sia Mistry. She is a storyboard artist who's actually worked on shows like King of the Hill and stuff like that. And I decided to invite her to talk about what it's like being a storyboard artist, the Animation Guild contract, and what's it like to feud with YouTubers who may or may not know what they are talking about. Sia, welcome to the channel.
Hi, thanks for having me. Quite an intro.
Thank you. I've done that intro so many times. It's like, boy, it's almost second nature now. Now, it must be kind of like how when you draw certain things over and over again, people are like, oh, that's really impressive. It's like, it's not that impressive. It's kind of second nature now.
It's like muscle memory, practically.
Yep. Yep. Now, I will say one of the things that I will say before we get into any of the major topics, just because I do want to, I always like to personalize things, like things that kind of struck me. And I did come on based on a response video you made to some famous YouTubers. We'll talk about that later. But when I checked out your portfolio, the thing that kind of got me, like right here, were your Instagram posts about your dog.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm a dog person. Like, we have a dog and a cat. They're called Lilo and Stitch.
It's adorable.
Yeah, Lilo's the pug and Stitch is the cat. He totally lives up to the name, by the way. He's a pain in the butt. But
it's a great combo.
Yeah. And they're like a year and a half old each, because we adopted the pug at 8 weeks, and then a week later we adopted the cat who was 6 weeks. So they're going to grow up together. And I'm already worried about the day when they're going to be old, and I'm going to have that the sad real conversation with the vet. So I just have a hard time imagining what life's going to be like without them. So those images kind of got me in the hearts. Right
yeah. It's the life of every pet owner.
It's the life of every.
Yeah,
they basically live to break your heart.
Yeah.
That's what they do. So, but aside from that almost morbid way to begin the episode, now that I think about it,
it's all good.
Tell me a little bit about what you do, some of the stuff you've worked on, and how long you've been doing it.
Sure. So yeah, I have been working in the animation industry since 2018. I went to Ringling College of Art and Design after I graduated from high school. I studied animation there, and around the time that I graduated, it was kind of like the last wave of like the streaming bubble. So Netflix was hiring like everyone. There was like so many jobs going around and everything like that. So yeah, I had 3-4 years of being like fairly steadily employed. In that time period, I worked on an action adventure show for Lego, and I also did a couple of different shows for Disney Junior. And the past like year and a half, I worked on the King of the Hill revival over at Hulu. And ever since then, you know, like the industry's been slowing down, as I'm sure you've heard. So in that time period, I've just been doing like side hustles, like YouTube here and there, while still looking for my next gig.
Oh, so you did do stuff for King of the Hill. That doesn't mean the show's been already canceled, has it?
Honestly, I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk about it. I do know it's been announced.
That's a joke, by the way. You don't. Okay. I don't actually expect you to answer that question. And by the way, to anyone who's watching this live or listening to the podcast, I should probably mention up front, there probably are things I can say about these companies that I am not going to expect you to say or comment on, because you have to work with these people. I don't technically, so I can make comments, but it's like, worked on King of the Hill, hasn't premiered yet. Yeah, that's a great start. They're usually working on the following season before the first season air. So, yeah, that's just but who knows? Maybe it'll be a huge hit, although huge hit in terms of streaming is so relative. Like, I'm not surprised the streaming bubble burst, honestly,
Yeah.
because, I when I talk about streaming with people, I always like using the analogy where like one of my friends never signs up for credit cards. He's like 72, it should be mentioned. When they say, "Oh, we'll give you 30,000 points," he's like, "Well, what's a point? Like, what's the value of a point?"
That's a valid question.
Yeah, I feel that way about streaming, where like Carry On had like 55 million views on Netflix, and that wasn't a bad movie, by the way. But it's like, well, what's 55 million viewers actually worth in a dollar amount?
Especially compared to traditional cable.
Right, or movie tickets. I know what Wicked was.
Yeah.
Wicked was apparently worth about $52 for me because I saw it once in IMAX and then I saw it
Oh,
again
nice.
in 3D. And that's one of the best films of the year, by the way. I have
Nice.
been admitting that. But if I watch that twice on Peacock and I don't pay anything for it,
Yeah.
what's it worth? So, from your perspective, like, okay, so you're getting out of college. This might be an interesting question. And work is pretty steady. And it's like, oh, this is great. I'm out of college. I'm already getting steady work. Even then, were you kind of wondering, like, how long can this last? How does this stuff really make money?
That's a really good question. Like when I first graduated, I really had no frame of reference as to how these things really work. The only thing I really had to go off of was all of the industry veterans that I worked with at my first job. 'Cause I work with people that have been, storyboarding since before I was even born. Like these are people that have like 20, 30, 40 years of experience. And almost everyone told me, like there's going to be ups and downs in the industry. There's going to be periods of unemployment, but a lot of them like personally told me like I've never been unemployed for more than like 6 months in my entire career. And that's a time span of like 20, 30 years. So that's kind of what I was mentally preparing for. I was like, okay, like this is not going to be like one stable career in the sense that I can hang out at one studio for like 20 years. But in general, if I play my cards right and I network correctly, I'll be able to sustain myself and hop from one job to another like everyone else does. And now, towards the tail end of like 2024, a lot of those people, a lot of those veterans are unemployed for upwards of 6 months. So that's really scary. I witnessed firsthand how last year when I got hired on King of the Hill, like it felt like King of the Hill was the only show hiring at that time. Wow. A lot of my team members had been coming off of like several months of unemployment. And even when all of us, wrapped up and got laid off, like I wasn't expecting to find a new job like at all. This was like August of this year. So just like 4 months ago. And yeah, it's been quite a course correction from what I've heard. I've been told that, the streaming bubble and just like how much work there was to go around, like that wasn't normal. And now things are like course correcting a little bit. What that means for people that are early on in their career or people that haven't broken in yet, like I don't really know. And it's really hard to say. A lot of people I know are just, switching careers, picking up like retail work or just like, figuring out other things to sustain themselves.
Yeah. Was that what prompted you to create your YouTube channel? Was a lack of work?
Pretty much. It wasn't necessarily a lack of work, but more so when I first started my YouTube channel, the first like 6 months or so, I was in a job that I didn't really enjoy, just in terms of like the work environment. And it was like starting to like wear away a little bit at my mental health. And even though I loved storyboarding and I loved what I was working on, it just wasn't a good like quality of life. So I told myself, like it's nice to do animation and all, but it would be really nice to be at a point where I have other streams of income so that I don't have to rely on a toxic job just to be able to pay my bills. I want to be able to have some sort of like financial cushion on the side just in case of like emergencies and stuff like that, but not necessarily, I don't want to be like a full-time YouTuber, at least not right now. So my
Right.
main intention, my main goal right now is just to have some financial cushion so that I don't have to, rely on a toxic job just to pay the bills, or, like take like any retail job or any other like job that I can get just to be able to survive.
Yeah, well, I have definitely taken jobs that would rather not have, if I'm being
Yeah,
have
I think
had,
all of us
and
have.
but sometimes you just have to do it.
Yeah.
But so hopeful. But so far you're not in that position. You're loving everything you're doing. I hope you're doing good. You
I
seem
do. I mean, King of the Hill was a total blast. It was probably my favorite show that I've ever worked on. I would have stayed on that show for like 30 years if they let me.
okay. I will ask one
So,
thing, and I hope you can answer this question. Did you at least get to talk to Mike Judge?
I did not,
Aw,
unfortunately. He lives in Texas.
that would
I
make
did.
sense.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he lives in Texas. I got to see him in a lot of the table reads, like because they were all over Zoom, so that was fun. Um, it's just fun seeing him like voice act and like going to like his Hank voice like just immediately. It's really fun. But I never got to actually like meet him or like talk to him. Same with Greg Daniels. It would have been really fun to like meet him, but it never got to that point.
Well, they're busy selling propane and propane accessories. That's a horrible impression. If that's why I'm a podcaster, not a voice actor. So, well, now then, someone says nobody in the chat. No, you're in the chat. And by the way, folks, provided that the questions are reasonable and not rude, we might answer some of them. So now, one thing I like about your YouTube channel, aside from the fact there are some videos about like the harsh realities of the animation industry. Like, look, you're going to work on projects you don't like. You're going to work with people that you don't know how they have that job, but they have it. It's not going anywhere. You've had a few of those videos, but overall, your videos tend to be more positive. I love the stuff you did about PewDiePie, where you're just admiring his artwork thing. But the main thing that you want to do with that channel, and I definitely promised I would bring this up and we would talk about it, is that you have ADHD.
Mhm.
Like I'm autistic, so sometimes us disabilities people, we want to do things, but our disabilities becomes a hindrance. Like I, believe it
Yeah.
or not, am super camera shy, probably because of my disability, and I also had a stutter, which I've spent years working on. What decide what's it like? Like, how do you come to the decision where it's like, okay, I'm going to come out in the open and I'm going to share my disability, which, by the way, will open up tons of criticism if people disagree with you. You just can't avoid it.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to not only talk about it, I'm going to help people deal with this. Like, what made you decide you wanted to do that?
Honestly, I think I'm very lucky to even be in an era where mental health isn't as stigmatized as it used to be like years ago. My ADHD story is like a lot of other people, like during the pandemic when we all went into lockdown, a lot of the external structures that us ADHD people rely on just to, function, like going to school, going to work, having like places to like show up in so that you can do all the things you're supposed to do. When that structure went away during lockdowns, that's when it hit me like, oh, like I have a problem. Like this doesn't like seem normal. I always had an inkling that there was like something off with me. Either I was like lazy or just like not very focused, a bit like airheaded, like stuff like that. So luckily around that time, like ADHD and like discussion of ADHD was like all over TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, like everything. And at that point, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna talk to a psychiatrist about this because like I'm having a hard time like dealing with this whole like work from home thing. I'm like barely meeting my deadlines, and I'm just like really struggling with just like sitting down at my desk and like focusing on like one thing at a time. So I got a diagnosis, and that led to a lot of emotional upheaval. You could say a lot of like soul searching, a lot of just like coming to terms with like who I could have been if I was diagnosed earlier. And at that point, I was just like, I think the pandemic like gave a lot of people just like a bit of a identity crisis.
Mm.
So at that point, I just felt like, expressing that through my art. And then I started making like all mental health, depression, ADHD related comics on Instagram, and kind of all just like went from there. I really enjoy helping other people that have ADHD and helping them with their struggles. So it's organically become part of my brand, I think.
Yeah, I see. That's a great story. I actually kind of understand what you say about the lockdowns. Now, I was diagnosed when I was like 6, was told when I was 10. So I had years upon years of, I call it social therapy, because
I see.
I went to like with a group of people with Asperger's, and we would actually role play how to interact with people. In fact, I don't know if I've ever shared this story in the podcast, but I don't like The Office. Now, here's why this is relevant. Because I have a different perspective of The Office. We were actually told to watch The Office as homework in that group. And we were told specifically, pay attention to Michael Scott, how he says whatever he wants, and then they want you to pay attention to how other people react. And it actually was very useful, like to kind of like almost see like what an unfiltered mouth could do and how people could react kind of outside yourself. So
interesting.
I have a hard time watching that just as entertainment, because I'm mentally doing the homework as I'm watching that show.
Oh, that's so fascinating.
Yep. But thankfully, because I was diagnosed so early when the pandemic happened, one of the things that I realized right away, that social media was not going to help me get through it. And in fact, it was probably going to cause a lot of anxiety. So I actually had to make plans like, okay, I'm going to stay off of Facebook and stuff. I'm going to make it a point to call someone every night and talk to them, because heck, if I'm not doing something, they're not doing anything either. And
yeah,
I had to come up with a plan. So the earlier you are diagnosed with one of these things, the better it is. And when people come to me and say like, well, I think I might have this, but I don't want to get diagnosed, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's like, no, you should want to know, because once you know, that's where you can start excelling in areas that you might be struggling in. Some people here could not go to graduation because of COVID, and I agree. It brought out, well, I don't know if COVID brought out the worst in everyone, or did social media and their algorithms bring out the worst in everyone. Because those algorithms have always been bad. It was just never before were people given hours upon hours to be in front of it. That conversation went a little off the rails.
You're good.
We're here to talk about but I will ask, I don't, hopefully this is not too bad of a joke. Was there a little bit of irony in figuring out that you might have ADHD by watching TikTok videos?
That's a good point. I don't know. I feel like there's so much overlap between like Instagram Reels and like TikTok that I don't even know like which one it was. Okay. Although I do think TikTok might have a bit of like a taking things out of context and like giving out unsolicited like medical advice problem, especially when it comes to ADHD.
I resent all these self-diagnosis videos that are on TikTok. It's like, no, that's dangerous. Like, go get an actual diagnosis. What if you're wrong and it's something else you need to work on?
I kind of see both sides of it, because like not everyone has access to healthcare, and especially like a psychiatrist, stuff like that. So I can see self-diagnosis being like the initial step, but I don't think it should ever stop at like just being a self-diagnosis or having that be like the end all be all of everything.
No, I agree. So all right, so lockdown's happening, you're doing these comics for Instagram, things are taking off. Was this when your first storyboard project also started within this lockdown, or did that happen after we all rejoined life?
My first storyboarding job ever was started in 2018, so it was like just before the lockdown. Although I was a revisionist for like about a year and a half, and as soon as I got promoted to like storyboarding, that's when lockdowns hit. So I was dealing with like more responsibilities at my job and the lockdown at the same time, and it was not a good time, I'll tell you that.
No, it wasn't a
Yeah.
well, it wasn't a good time for a lot of people,
Yeah.
especially those of us who actually know people who died because
Yeah.
of this
Yeah. It's really
thing.
tragic.
Yeah, it was a terrible time. But animation in particular was great to have during lockdowns, like because it's like you could almost really go into another world. That's when me and my
Yeah.
wife we'd watched Teen Titans, not Teen Titans Go, the good Teen Titans, and I I introduced her to Sailor Moon and Dragon
Nice.
Ball, not Dragon Ball Z. You're supposed to watch it in an order. And we actually created like Saturday morning cartoons. Like every Saturday, it'd be like we're gonna watch these like 4 or 5 shows in the
Oh,
morning.
that's
Just
awesome.
try to
I love
create
that.
a routine.
Yeah.
So there was also. It's funny as bad as that whole situation was. I think back at moments like that, and it's like, but there was a lot of good moments too. It is true that you can't control everything that life throws at you, but you can choose work on how you respond to
Yeah.
that, which is one of the reasons why I do like your channel, because you're kind of taking that, okay, I've got this ADHD thing, it causes these issues, and I'm never going to be able to get rid of it unless Penn Jillette magic tricks it away. So
Yeah.
how can I deal with it? And not all of the videos are free. You do actually have like a personal course thing. So what's that like? And are you seeing are a lot of people taking advantage and getting use out of your guidance?
Yeah, so what I provide is specifically ADHD coaching. It's very different from, like counseling or therapy or anything
Oh
like
yes,
that.
one of the things I read on your site was like, this is not, I'm not a counselor.
Yeah,
If your problems are too big, you should probably see an actual doctor. This is a support
yeah,
group. That's different.
yeah. The way I like to describe it is counseling therapy is about like your past, like any traumas or any like medical conditions that you have, and coaching is about your present and your future.
Mm, that's a
So
good way of
I
putting it.
basically think of it as I'm thinking there's a lot of like art education online. You can take classes at like Concept Design Academy or Brainstorm or just like there's just so many avenues for art education. What I do is I combine that with ADHD coaching in the sense of providing like productivity advice, if that makes sense.
Mm,
I've taken a ton of classes on my own time. I've taken a lot of storyboarding classes and stuff like that. And it's good to like have that knowledge, but when you have ADHD or another condition that can cause those executive function challenges, like you can't be productive in your own time.
mm,
Like you can't focus on the things that you're taking away from that class because your brain's just like not wired a certain way. So I help
mm,
people bridge that gap. A lot of creatives, a lot of artists have ADHD, and yet so many of us struggle with stuff like just getting a painting done or like just finishing something before you start like another million projects and stuff like that.
mhm.
So I help people kind of navigate that and figure out like ADHD specific coping strategies to help them in their creative life.
And I'm sure you're also helping them understand how the business is going to view, metaphorically you and your work ethic and what their expectations are going to be. When my dad told
Yeah,
me I was autistic, I mean, one of the best things he ever told me, and I know this goes counter to what a lot of people say, but he's like, so Kevin, you have this, it creates this problems. It will, he listed out all the ways in which it was going to be basically a lifelong pain in the butt. And then he said, and guess what? Nobody will care. You've got to figure out how to work on their terms because they're not going to care. I
yeah,
mean, you probably don't do it quite as bluntly, but there probably is an element where it's like, well, look, it's not like they're mean or anything, but they have a certain expectation and you're going to
yeah.
have to work within those expectations. You can't just blow off that stuff because you're personally struggling.
Yeah, it really depends on the individual, client that I have because some people do want to work in the industry. Like some people do want to be professional artists, and that's when working with other people's expectations, like you mentioned, becomes like really, really crucial. I also have students that just want to do art as a hobby,
Hmm.
and for them, it's just a matter of figuring out like what kind of art do I gravitate towards, like what's my work style, like do I work better in like short bursts of inspiration at a time, or am I better off just like rearranging my schedule so I have like an uninterrupted 48 hours for this one project? Like I help people figure out stuff in that sense. And then eventually, if they feel like they're ready, or if they want to do art in like a professional sense, that's when all of the other like social skills come in.
Right. Yeah. Do you also coach people like kind of with the realities of like, I know you love drawing, I know you love art, I know you want to work in these movies, but just to give you a heads up, your perspective on things might change a little once your hobby becomes your job.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is something that I talk about like all the time, even if they're not like clients. It's just natural, for your life and your perspective to change once you make it your career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I've had to explain to people where they're like, oh, you get to see the Marvel movies early, because I've been a film critic for I don't know how many years now. And I would tell them, guys, that's really not a big deal anymore. You're seeing everything early. In fact, one of the reasons critics get a little annoyed with Marvel movies is because they are so similar to one another that it sometimes gets like, I mean, I could like say like, look, I like Spider-Man No Way Home, but I've reviewed 8 of these movies. What else is there to say about it at this point? So, yeah,
it's like what Scorsese said.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about Scorsese is I think the reason those comments are still talked about is because I think he hit a nerve where a lot of people, they don't want to admit it, but it's like he's not entirely wrong about this. I mean, sure, you have your masterpieces like The Dark Knight, Joker, Superman the movie, Spider-Man 2, Wonder Woman, but those are the exceptions. Most of these movies are exactly what he described. So, okay, you're storyboarding, you're living the dream. I'm actually going to save that question for last, because that's like I'm going to save this question for last. But you're doing your thing, you're making YouTube, and then you see a video from a YouTube channel called Clownfish TV. Now, as I forgot if I said this at the beginning of the video or beforehand, but I don't personally dislike Clownfish TV. I find several of their videos entertaining. I don't agree with everything they say. I actually am one of those people who will purposefully watch YouTubers that I almost actively disagree with, because I do want the other side. So whether I agree or disagree, I think that can be healthy. But, and let me turn the phone on silent, they make a video about, I believe it was the animation strike, or it was Moana 2. I mean, they probably did it about both. They do so many videos. And it definitely rubs you the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
Where you make a video.
It's an understatement.
And I mean, well, people like me discover you. I mean, that's a positive. But now you've made a video that is not typically what you would make on your channel, and it blows up. So I guess the first couple questions, they're kind of all one. Is like, okay, so what's it feel like to make a video that blows up for something you're not really interested in taking your channel down this road? And I mean, what really inspired you like to make it like, say, I just will not live with myself if I don't talk about this?
Yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged sword in the sense that it's very therapeutic to make those videos, but at the same time, I've just unleashed a horde of trolls in my comment section on like every single video that I'm probably ever gonna make.
Yeah.
It's just, no, for me, it was a matter of like just for like a bit of like a personal background and context. I come from like a very like pro labor family. Like my entire family is like very left leaning. So I've just grown up hearing about how strikes work, how unions work, stuff like that. And I distinctly remember last year during the WGA SAG-AFTRA strikes, when I was laid off and I was just trying to do like more social media, I noticed this undercurrent of people in the general public, and this is not to like fault anyone who's not familiar with Hollywood, because like why would you be? But a lot of people just did not understand why writers were on strike or why actors were on strike, because everyone has this misconception that anyone that works in Hollywood is like a millionaire and they're like privileged and they're like making it big, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I noticed that. Sorry,
they make a lot more money than
they
do, which it's like, well, yeah, you could sell a script for $60,000, but you might not write another one for 4 months. I mean,
yeah, Yeah, so I noticed like that general undercurrent like within like the public, like your average like Facebook or whoever is like, oh, why do these Hollywood writers like need to make so much money, like stuff like that. So that was kind of like the undercurrent of everything. And then I came across Clownfish TV, and 5 minutes into their video, I was just like internally like losing my mind at just the not only like the depth of the misinformation, but also like the confidence with which they say things. Because
They
there's nothing
always
wrong with like being wrong and admitting when you don't know something, but it's just like they take the misconceptions and they like dial it up to 100, and there's like no follow-up, no clarification, nothing.
well, civil discourse doesn't get clipped.
Yeah.
This video will probably get maybe 1,000 views, but not to the extent that they're going to like, like if I had them on and they were calling me, stupid and I didn't know what I was talking about, which I saw their follow-up video, the one that only had Geeky Sparkles, and I have to admit that seemed unusually specific. Like I think you touched a nerve, and the fact that their official account left that comment where it's like, you're welcome for the views, it's like that's pretty much confirmation that they were talking about you, and that they weren't approaching this with a good faith argument. They were flaunting that they could say this and pretty much drown you out.
Yeah, like what really hurts on a very like visceral level for me is the fact that in the Animation Guild there's maybe 7,000 total members. Yeah. And Clownfish TV's videos get 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 views on the regular.
Yeah.
So it's painful.
That's why some people, I know this is not your calling, but that's why some people, like I know that there was a SAG-AFTRA writer who actually got famous by rebuking Clownfish TV, saying like,
really?
This is why we're going on strike. This is what's going on. Like, you were one of the people who actually pointed out like the work was drying up before the strike happened, and nobody wants to go on strike. The thing that, and here's even though I think they do have some valid points in some videos and things like that, one thing that has always bothered me is it's like, why are they so interested in like siding with the boss? They've been screwed over by Disney before. They've been screwed over by bosses. That's why they push the go the independent route, own your own stuff. Not something I disagree with, by the way. If you can do it independently and make money, that's definitely great. But like, you guys got screwed over by bosses. Why wouldn't you want things like collective bargaining to put those bosses in their place to screw people over less?
Yeah. Maybe you hit the nail on the head. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the part, that was the part about this whole little back and forth, because I consider it to be a back and forth. I can't prove it, I have to say that for legal reasons, but I perceive that as a back and forth. You said something, you pointed out that this is not how the things were working. They got pissy, like, don't cry to us when things are wrong. And by the way, sometimes they do get it right. Like, they were the ones who did break the story that in the Netflix He-Man series, He-Man was going to get killed off. Kevin Smith actually quote tweeted their video and said, as someone who works in the show, this does not happen. And thank you. But then the show came on, and that very same show that Kevin Smith said, this does not happen. No, first episode, He-Man was killed. So they've got some inside sources. I don't doubt that. It's just when they're saying like, well, we've been told not to talk to us. It's like, well, maybe the reason is because people are watching your videos and not getting the sense you're in their corner.
Yeah.
And anything they tell you might be used against them, which on that note, the contract did get ratified. One of the things they said is that there was a lot of problems with the contract that they saw. Now, I don't know if it was the same contract you guys voted on, but but did you agree that the contract had if you're allowed to say this, that the contract?
Yeah, so the contract actually got ratified like a week ago, almost exactly a week ago. So I can talk about it now.
Okay.
The reason I reacted to their video originally was because they made that video before the contract was even released to membership. It took like a few
and how would
days.
they get it then?
I think they got information on it just from like the TAG official website, because basically what happened was, I think it was Friday evening or like Friday night. They reached an agreement, the AMPTP and our negotiating committee. They reached the agreement. They put out like a summary of like the general gist of everything that was agreed upon, and then it took 4 or 5 days, I think, for the actual contract and the actual memorandum of agreement to be published, because our lawyers had to go through all of the contract language and like double check everything was in accordance with what was agreed upon. Because I guess these studios can be really sneaky. They can just like throw stuff in there and like hope that you don't notice. So it took quite a few days for membership to actually receive the full language of the contract. So that's what I was reacting to, because I was like, yeah, Clownfish TV is making all of these extrapolations from like what they're given, but like as a member, I don't even have the contract. Like I can't confirm or deny anything. I can also extrapolate as much as they're extrapolating, but like the fact that they're speaking with like so much confidence does not make sense, because this is an ongoing situation.
Yeah. Well, they were obviously wrong that the Animation Guild wasn't going to ratify it because it had serious problems.
Yeah, I think so personally for me, like I mentioned this in my video that I uploaded today, like full disclosure, I personally voted no on the contract for like my own reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I voted no on it specifically because I am not much of a believer in incrementalism, like, you know, getting like small wins here and there while you can get them. That has not proven to be a winning strategy in my experience so far. And I don't know if I would have like voted to go on strike if the contract hadn't passed, but I was just in a place where I was like, you know, like other people have the right to vote however they want to vote on this contract, but for me, I feel the need to tell the negotiating committee, like, this is not good enough for me personally. So that's why I voted no on it.
Yeah,
but you know, like it passed with a majority.
Video.
So.
I watched your video, and you know, by the way, everyone, I recommend you go to our YouTube channel and watch it as well. We don't have time to go over it, but like I agreed that like the increments were like not that great, and it's kind of frustrating because as someone who has followed animation union contract things for like a long time, it's like the Animation Guild only seems to get the most bare increments. And I don't know if that means it's just not an effective union. I'm not going to put you in the spot to comment on that, but it's like, yeah, why aren't some of these changes more substantial? The only one that I kind of agree with was the AI thing. It's like, yeah, that probably is a copyright thing, because if you personally don't own anything and AI is used and it steals from your work, since the studio owns it, it's up to them to decide if they want to sue the other company for making derivative stuff, which you know, that should be the biggest detriment against using the thing, because everything's going to look so detrimental that the studios are just going to spend millions upon millions of dollars suing each other for making stuff that looks like their old stuff. Like, so it doesn't seem like a good winning strategy for them. But I wish you guys had gotten a little bit more money. I especially wish that they could have used like something like Moana 2 to say, like, you see how valuable we are to your companies and stuff. Look at, I mean, so this is personal opinion. You don't have to agree. I am flabbergasted that a movie can make $900 million and counting and be as such a non-event to people as it is. I don't know anyone who talks about this movie. I haven't
seen it either, so I can't even comment on the actual content of the movie.
Yep, I have nieces and nephews who saw it, don't talk about it at all. They keep singing the Wicked songs, but they're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It's kind of like Moana came and went, and it was like, I mean, that kind of checks out. It was supposed to be a streaming series, but how does something this forgettable and bland make $900 million? And I wish the Animation Guild could have used that to say, hey, this movie sucks, and you're making almost $1 billion off of us. I think you can afford to give us a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's when did it come out? Was it like Thanksgiving?
It came out
Right?
Thanksgiving. Yeah. And by the way,
Okay,
someone
we
who
were
watches
like,
and as someone who watches the box office, it has been kind of going down while Wicked continues to kind of keep its course. So
yeah. I think we had already wrapped up the bulk of negotiations by the time it came out because we started in August.
I see.
Um, from what I can tell, like these negotiations, like they start preparing like a year and a half in advance. So any sort of like, current changes or current updates, like it doesn't really play that much of a factor
I see.
from what I can tell. I can't really speak to like the animation guild's like overall like history in terms of like negotiating, but there are quite a few things that I've come to learn that set it apart from like other Hollywood unions. One really big thing is that the Animation Guild is comprised of many different crafts, whereas SAG-AFTRA and WGA are just like one craft. So that makes negotiating a lot more difficult because you have to negotiate on behalf of storyboard artists, directors, writers, color designers, animators, CG people, everyone. Like it's a very big tent.
Yeah, and
So that makes it a lot more difficult.
And some people's needs are not necessarily the needs of others, and so you
Mm-hmm.
have to prioritize the most general
Mm-hmm.
needs that will please as much people in the guild as possible. I know that the Directors Guild have had discussions about letting animation directors become members of the
Yeah.
Directors Guild, and I hope that happens because it's like, I mean, how does someone like, it's like, how come Brad Bird can make Iron Giant and Incredibles and Ratatouille and not be considered a real director, but then he makes Mission Impossible 4, which isn't bad in all fairness, but like that's the one that makes him eligible to join your exclusive club.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, I think people are still watching those other 3 movies more than that one. So
yeah, Hollywood doesn't take animation seriously, like in general.
Yeah, like Brad Bird's not a serious director when he makes Ratatouille, but he makes Tomorrowland. Yeah, you're a real director then, even though that movie's considerably worse. So, well, normally I ask a very pompous philosophical question, but considering your area of like, you're in some ways living the dream. You're working on the animation, you're doing the storyboards, you're following your passion. So I'm going to end with, what's it like to be living the animation dream?
It is a huge privilege. I'm not even gonna like sugarcoat that even a little bit. I have so many students and mentees that want to do what I've been doing, and the main reason that they're not able to do that isn't because they're not talented. It's because they just don't have access to the same opportunities that I've had. Whether that's like education or like visas or just like being in like a certain location at a certain time, like it's a huge privilege to even be able to do I guess like the level of animation that I'm at, to be able to work on like a really big show like King of the Hill. At the same time, it's just a job. It's just a day job. It's a 9 to 5. We just clock in, clock out. You get paid. You get your benefits. You get your health insurance and all of that. And at the end of the day, like it's a very nice job. It's a very cushy job, but you're just an employee at the whim of a big corporation.
Right. Yeah, there's only a few people who work on movies, like maybe certain directors or actors, that are so like it's their passion project and they control a certain amount. For the most part, this is a job. By the way, football and baseball fans, that's how your favorite teammates go home and sleep at night when they lose a game, because it's a job to them.
Sleeping on piles of money.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, not that I want to. I hope I'm not opening a can of worms, but it was just such a good response where someone asked J.K. Rowling, "How do you live with yourself?" And she said, "I find my royalty checks help me sleep at night." It's like, it was like, yeah. That's a great response. What can I tell you? I won't say what that was in reference to, but it was a great comeback regardless how I felt about the subject. So, all right. Well, is there anything else you want? Where can people? Well, I guess I've got your website and your Instagram up. Is Sia Mistry also the name of your YouTube channel?
Yes, it's SIAMYSTERY, same as my Instagram. I should probably change that to my actual last name, but you know, I'll probably do that later. But yeah, that's
yeah,
it's all my socials right here.
I kind of like it how it's spelled mystery like a mystery. Like I actually think that's kind of cool
Thank
myself.
you.
Plus, it makes it difficult for people to look you up on the online yellow pages, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
So
A
just
little bit of anonymity.
yeah, just a little bit of advice from someone who went by my full name for years, starting when I was a teenager, not really realizing what the implication of that would be if I ended up creating a YouTube channel that got almost 20,000 subscribers and a fair amount of haters.
Mm.
That's another story that we won't get into now. But anyway, folks, please check out her channel, check out her work. If you're a studio who is watching this, because I know some studio people watch this channel. I'm sure she would not object to having another job, and
That would be great.
yeah, she's nicer than some guests I've had on this show, so why not, right? So check her out. As for everyone else, if this is your first time checking out the podcast and you happen to like what you see, hey, let's make it official. Subscribe either on YouTube, or we're on Spotify, Apple, Deezer. Feel free to leave the comments on the platforms that do allow comments, and I will be seeing all of you not only at the movies but in the new year. Take care.